Yo, what is going on YouTube? Welcome back to another Carolina Country Boy Classic. Today I'm gonna be going over how I was able to catch a giant peacock bass in South Florida, only 10 hours from my house. So if you want to learn how I did it, stay tuned to the end of the video. So as a part of my vacation with my girlfriend, we ended up going to St. Augustine, Florida for her vacation, but I went an additional 4 hours down south to South Florida to go after some peacock bass. And I had a lot of trouble doing it. I had some days that I did not do very well at all. I did catch some other species, you know, when I was going after other stuff, but really I wanted to catch a big peacock bass. That was the main goal of the trip. And I was actually successful on the very last day using this one spot and one technique that I figured out at the very end. So I was thinking about going out with a couple guides. I contacted a couple guys to try to take me out fishing for some peacock bass, especially the trophies. But I ended up doing that because it didn't fit the budget. And I wanted to kind of try to find the spots on my own. I went a lot of different areas, which I'll explain in the video. And I was very unsuccessful doing so. As you know, somebody who is local to a fishery is going to know a hell of a lot more about fishing that area than you are. So I had to try a bunch of different areas. And I was very unsuccessful. But like I said in the intro, there's going to be things I'm going to talk about in this video that made all the difference, okay? And I actually have previous experience coming down there. I went down there in 2022 of December, and I actually caught my first peacock bass ever, my first big one. That thing was like 5 pounds. And I was able to do that with a buddy, my buddy Nate, my colleague. I actually called him last week, and I was able to come down there and fish with him. This is why I was sort of successful, because I was able to have a friend to kind of put me on some spots, which I'll give him full credit for. And I'll also just say that he was helpful for me in 2022 as well. So guys, if you have buddies that live in South Florida, or if you just have people that live in an area you're trying to go fish, talk to them, call them, ask them things. Don't be too nosy. If they really have spots that they're willing to share with you, then ask them. But if not, be respectful at all times, because people have spent their life trying to figure out where these spots are, and it's just so disrespectful to just ask somebody, hey man, where's your spots? You know, it's just, to me, that's very rude, and I'll never answer someone's question when they ask me that. So I want to kind of give you guys a little report on what I did, how I did each day, and where I went, so you can have a little perspective on, you know, what I did. So the first day that I got there, me and my buddy Nate went to a place along the Everglades, like a little park, and we fished for some Florida strain largemouth. I've heard there's peacocks in there, did not have any luck with that. And the first day that I went there, I realized that the water was low and it was very, very hot. And we had some success. I caught some nice Florida strain largemouth on the popping frog, spro popping frog. And gosh, those South Florida Florida strain largemouth are so pretty. But we did not catch any peacocks there. We had a bunch of gators following our little largemouth in, and we just didn't want to stay there any longer. So we took off from there. We went to Lake Ida, and Lake Ida is a place that I have previous experience in. I actually caught a big peacock bass there down in December of 2022, which is I think 3-4 years ago, with the same guy, Nate. And we went to a bridge piling, and we were able to throw a shiner around it, and we caught it like that. I'll leave a picture of it right there, and you'll come to realize in this video that that was not successful for me at all. So we went to Lake Ida with his rented kayak and my kayak that I brought down, and we ended up catching a nice clown knife fish together, which I'll leave right here. And we found that the baits that we were using were not big enough to go down around where these peacocks were staying, and we were just losing a lot of hope, because all the bait shops in South Florida get the same size shiners, and we didn't have any way to catch them. I didn't have a cast net, and it was kind of a bust for us. So I threw a lot of artificial, I threw a lot of poppers, I threw a lot of hair jigs. You know, I caught a few on the popper, nothing to brag home about, but it wasn't enough to convince me to stay there any longer, because I thought Lake Ida, you know, it's not as far down south as, say, Miami or Homestead. So the second day that I went down there, I was like, I'm going to go further down south, because maybe they're further down south. And that same day I learned that the peacock bass were no longer spawning. So they were not up shallow, and they were actually recovering from the spawn offshore or in some deep spots. And I actually went down to a couple ponds down there in Homestead and South Miami, and I went fishing in Blue Lagoon, and I did not have any success. And the problem that I had in South Florida was all of these ponds are gated. I went everywhere, guys. I tried to find places to put in. And if you can find somebody that has, you know, the know-how or just ways to get into certain spots, there are some giant peacock bass to be caught in some of these ponds. I guarantee you the state record come from one of those ponds, because I did read a story about it, and the guy didn't actually catch it out of the canal that he says he caught it out of. He caught it out of a pond. So the biggest peacock bass in that state, in that South Florida state, live in those big ponds because, you know, they don't have anywhere to go. But I have heard some giants being caught out of the canals too, some 7-8 pounders. So what I did was I went to Blue Lagoon after that because I couldn't find anywhere to put in. And I went to this place along Blue Lagoon. It had a bunch of canals connected to it. It had a bridge. It looked perfect for peacock bass. And did not have any luck. Threw X-Wraps. I threw topwaters. I threw hair jigs. Same thing I threw at Lake Ida. Not a follow, not a hit, not a tap, nothing. And I don't know why that was. I don't know if it was because of the wind. I don't know if it was because of the clouds. I don't know what exactly it was. So it was a very humbling drive back on the second day because I had not had any luck, no success, and the plan that I had in my mind just did not come to fruition at all. So the third day I woke up, I said, I've got to try something different. I've got to approach it from a different angle. So I did some research on the species that live in these canals. I did some research on, you know, DNR and what they do. So DNR actually stocked peacock bass in South Florida in the early 60s or I think early 80s or something like that. And they were put in there to control the mine cichlid and the small invasive species populations. As if you guys don't know, the canals are full of like aquarium fish, and to me that's just weird, but that's only in South Florida. You don't have that anywhere else. I mean, it's just a cesspool, really. I would not eat any of these fish that come out of these canals, by the way. Absolutely disgusting what probably is in those canals, a lot of cancerous material. But looking at it from that perspective, I was actually able to put together a plan, and this plan ended up working, which you'll see later in the video. So I actually went to the bait shop and I said, I need some red worms with a long shank hook. Okay. I ended up tying up a drop shot, and the same drop shot I throw for smallmouth down here in the rivers. And I went to Lake Ida off the boat ramp where it's got a steep drop off. And man, me and this guy next to me, we were catching the hell out of some big mine cichlids, big tilapia. And the only way I was able to actually catch some nice 3 to 4 inchers, which I was going to end up using for bait, which you'll see also at the end of this video. It was so effective, the drop shot for these fish, because once that thing hit the water, it went straight down, and you were actually able to hold the red worm over their head, and it's just like you don't even have to shake it; they would just hit it when you put it on their head. So that's what I did. I actually rigged the worm wacky style, which I'm going to make a completely different video about that because that's effective for panfish all around the country. So I caught about 10 to 12 3 to 4 inch mine cichlids, tilapia, or any assortment of those fishes. And I went back to the car, and I pulled my kayak out, and I put in along these bridges, and I fished a lot of bridges, and I didn't have a lot of success at a lot of them. But the ones that I did have success in, man, were they on fire? They were on fire, guys. I mean, they were absolutely killing these mine cichlids. And looking back at it now, I wish I had the right tackle, and I wish I had the right hook. And man, it would have made a world of difference. I would have caught maybe 3 or 4 more big peacocks. Because let me tell you guys, when I found the right spot, when I threw that mine cichlid around these bridge pylons, it was like these mine cichlids were dancing around the bridge pylon, running away from the peacock bass. When I went to go reel in my hook after they had completely stripped it off of the bait, I mean, I was wrapped around the bridge pylon 3 or 4 times before I got my hook back. And that's how you know those peacocks were so fired up for those mine cichlids. And that's the key right there. That's what I did, okay? And I got really, really lucky on the second fish that I got bit on. Actually, I actually hooked it on the very, very edge of the lip, skin hooked it. And like I said, this is why tackle and the rods you're using is so important, because if you do hook a fish of a lifetime, or if you do get a fish of a lifetime to bite, you want to be able to hook that fish and get it to the boat. That is so important. That you guys, the most planning that you should ever be doing for a fishing trip is having the right tackle. I mean, it's because you might go fishing one day and they might just be on fire, and you don't need any of these techniques or plans. You just go fish, and if you don't have the right tackle, well, you're SOL, buddy. So I was SOL that day, because I had 5 or 6 blow-ups on the mine cichlids, and these mine cichlids, they kind of stayed in the middle of the water column. Sometimes they would come up to the top, but man, I'm trying to tell you guys, I'm not a local of South Florida, but the way that those peacocks were hitting, that coming up from the deep, right? Coming up from the deep and hitting these mine cichlids, tilapias. I mean, that's it. That's what I did. And it seems like some of the guys I talked to in South Florida thought that was a good idea. The guy at the bait shop I talked to, he said he didn't really do a lot of peacock bass fishing. He didn't know that would work, but it works. Okay. So if you're in a situation where you go down when it's hot, the water's low, like I was, go try to catch some mine cichlids. Or if you want to catch some bigger ones, if you're trying to look for that, bigger than average peacock bass, which I'd say the average is about 2 pounds. I caught a lot of those back in 2022. If you go in June, you want to fish with mine cichlids, and if you go any time of the year and you want bigger than average sizes, you want to fish with mine cichlids. But if you're going down there any other time of the year where the peacocks are actually fired up, make sure you get some bigger than average shiners. Make sure you get the right boat, and you can get in and go kayak around, and you get around these bridges, man. These bridges are where they're at, in these canals and these lakes. And I've seen some videos on YouTube of people catching them off docks. Those are good places too. But when I went, it was so low that the docks were only a foot in the water. So not a good place for me to fish. So I ended up going to these bridges, and I tried a bunch of different bridges, but like I said, the ones that were successful were the ones that had a lot of deep water and a lot of shade. There's one that comes off of Lake Ida. It's very long. It has a long bridge. I think it's like the interstate that goes over that lake, that canal. And under that canal, guys, there's some giants. So that was basically what I did those 3 days. All right, guys. So just to recap on the video, I want to kind of go over how easy it is to get down to South Florida, why you should make the trip if you're on the edge about it, and basically what you should do if you come down here. So basically, coming down to South Florida, it's not difficult. It's a straight shot. There's not a lot of turns. Obviously you have to merge on some different highways, but that's with anywhere you go. But it's basically all flat down there. A lot of traffic. Can be a lot of traffic at times. So I'm not saying it's going to be easy to get down there. You can take a flight down there, and you can go to Miami Airport. There's a couple of good places down there. Like I said, I didn't have any luck down there because I don't have the experience. But if you have a guide that knows what they're doing, go down there and talk to that guy and try to see if he'll put you on some. Because that is what I wish I had. I wish I had a shortcut to success. But there's not always a shortcut. Sometimes you got to work. And that's what I ended up having to do this last trip. But if you're on the fence about coming down because you think you're not going to catch the fish, or it's not worth the experience, then I'm here to tell you guys, it is worth the experience. These peacock bass are very, very pretty. They can get large, so you have a good chance of hooking a big one. They fight like a freight train. They fight like a smallmouth on steroids. They're actually a tiny bit more aggressive than smallmouth are, which if you're a smallmouth lover like I am, I love some smallmouth bass. And yeah, the experience is just unmatched. I mean, if you're not willing to go down to South America to catch some of the bigger peacocks, and you don't want to have to deal with going down to like the Amazon River and stuff, come down to South Florida. If you live in the Southeast, it's so easy to get down there. If you live anywhere else in the United States, take a plane trip or drive if you really want to get on them. It's an experience that I wish everybody that fishes would go and try, because the first time I went on a whim. Okay, I had a car that barely worked, and I was like, you know what? Guy has a place for me to stay. I'm gonna just drive my butt down there and I'm gonna fish. And that's what I ended up doing. So that's kind of what you should do if you're on the fence about it. But, you know, just to recap the technique that I used, you want to throw mined cichlids. Live mined cichlids is the deal. You want to make sure that you have a panfish setup that you can throw. And you also want to have the right setup to throw the mined cichlids out alive. And that can be a beefier pole with a beefier hook. So I would have maybe used a 2-aught, 1-aught or 2-aught circle hook or a tail hook. And that would have maybe given me some more power to get the hook into these fish better. Like I said, I skin hooked the peacock bass that I was actually holding up in that picture. And yeah, so make sure you have the right tackle. It's very, very pivotal to your success. And yeah, so that's going to be it for this video, guys. I hope you liked it. If you want to see more videos like this, tune in for more. If you want to see me go over some things for smallmouth and rivers, make sure you subscribe. And yeah, guys, keep it country, keep it Carolina. I'll see you in the next one.